We are now live and you may begin.
Thank you so much. Welcome to our February 3rd, 2021 City Council meeting for the City of Sierra Madre. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And before we do that, Madam City Clerk, I was just going to open it up this meeting, and I also want to adjourn the meeting in honor and memory of George Maurer. And I'll share a few words about him during my report, but for a 3-time mayor and a 12-time council person, I think we can do both an open and a closing in his honor. So, Madam City Clerk, if you can take roll, please.
Yes, ma'am. Roll call. Mayor Rachel Arizmendi.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Jean Goss.
Here.
Councilmember Edward Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly Krebs.
Here.
And Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum. You may conduct city business.
Thank you. And we have Councilmember Krebs today with the Pledge of Allegiance and inspiration.
Yes, so if everyone would stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Get resettled. So Lunar New Year, which occurred between meetings on February 12th, had me thinking, I guess, about new beginnings and clean slates. I know that I did, and I think many of us probably had, deep in the recesses of our mind that when the calendar turned over from 2020 to 2021, there would be some sweeping improvement of the quarantine conditions and other turmoil that we were experiencing in 2020. And then, of course, when the new year didn't bring that, complete turn of the page, I guess I wasn't really surprised, but, there was a little bit of me that was kind of, a letdown and sort of, disappointed. And I think that was probably true of many people. But I got to thinking maybe the new year we should have pinned our hopes on was the Lunar New Year, because it seems like things are, starting to slowly change and turn. Right now, obviously, our COVID cases and hospitalizations and deaths are down so much that, LA County is clearing, grades 3 through 6 to return to school. And there's finally some small optimism that secondary school might end up being back in person, which is very important for my household. And, restaurants are open for outdoor dining, other businesses are open at reduced capacity. So I feel like there's a glimmer, right? Obviously, we should be glad and have cautious optimism, but, remain vigilant in our social distancing and mask wearing. Hopefully, we're accelerating vaccinations and moving towards normalcy at some pace. So, the themes of the Lunar New Year are fortune, happiness, and health, and I'm certainly grateful to celebrate all of those. Good fortune, maximizing whatever moments of happiness we can capture, and working to preserve the health of my family and our community. So I wish all of the same for all of our Sierra Madre neighbors. So that's the inspiration for today.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Krebs. Happy Year of the Ox.
Next my birth year, so yes.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the meeting agenda. Do you have any changes or motion?
I move to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Parkhurst. Madam City Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Okay. Motion to approve the agenda as presented. Mayor Rachel Arizmendi.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jean Goss.
Aye.
Councilmember Edward Garcia.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly Krebs.
Aye.
And Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Aye.
Mayor, the motion passed unanimously 5-0.
Thank you. I may forget how to do votes when we go live. I'm so used to you, Madam City Clerk. The next item is approval for reading of the resolutions and ordinances. This is the vote of the City Council to read all ordinances and resolutions by title only and waive the reading in full. And I think we can go straight into a motion if someone would like to give a first.
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
And Councilmember Garcia and Madam City Clerk, if we can have a roll call vote, please.
Yes, motion to approve the reading of resolutions by title only and waive further reading is Mayor Rachel Arizmendi.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jean Goss,
Aye.
Councilmember Edward Garcia,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly Krebs,
Aye.
and Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Aye.
Mayor Arizmendi, the motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes for February 9, 2021. Do we have any changes, edits, amendments?
Madam Mayor, I have 3 small items on it.
Please, Mr. Parkhurst.
So under discussion on page 6, it's the paragraph second from the bottom. Utility Service Director Reynoso explained that the cost of water is depended on, I think is depends on or is dependent on. And then after the comma there, it says and has. It probably should be and he has, just to do a slight, making it easier to read. And then on page 7, under the discussion item 2, the second paragraph, Councilmember Parkhurst added that the logic behind requesting that this, we could probably strike to that, requesting this item was in light. So, and those are my only recommendations for the minutes.
Are there any other recommendations, edits, changes? Okay, seeing none. Do I have a motion to approve as amended?
I'll move, so move.
Second.
Thank you. And Madam City Clerk, if you can do a roll call vote, please.
Yes, motion to approve the agenda minutes from the February 9th meeting as amended. Mayor Rachel Arizmendi.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jean Goss,
Aye.
Councilmember Edward Garcia,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly Krebs,
Aye.
and Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Aye.
Madam Mayor, the motion to approve the minutes as amended has been approved.
Thank you very much. Next item we have is Mayor and City Council reports. Who would like to start?
I have a very short one.
Councilmember Creeds?
I was just excited to hear that we have decided and are going to move forward with the Mount Wilson Trail Race in the fall. I think at the last meeting, or maybe 2 meetings ago, I mentioned that, or maybe I mentioned separately to staff that running it in the fall seemed like a great idea. So I'm really glad that they were able to take me up on my proposal. So anyway, I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to see that things are starting to get rescheduled in a way that's going to make things seem somewhat normal again.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't know that. Good to hear. Thank you.
I can give a quick update.
Member Parkhurst?
So last week I attended the Planning Commission, and one of the big things they were doing was updating our code in response to legislation from last year, AB 2345. And so they're making the code comply with the law. So that was the focus of that meeting. And then on Friday, the Clean Power Alliance had a virtual reception, and showed a video of some of the places where we're getting our renewable energy. And it's really, really impressive, the sites and everything. And I'm working on getting a copy of that video to share with folks in the city. I think it's great to see where our funds are going in getting our energy. I just got back from Dodger Stadium. Second time my mother-in-law got her second dose. Took a little bit longer than the last time, 3 hours round trip versus 1 hour, but still the process ran very smoothly. We were in and out of there without too much problem. So, when your time comes up to get your vaccine, it is very straightforward. They've got a good process there. And I'd like to, echo a little bit of what Councilmember Creed said about that things are getting better, the rates are going down. If you ever look at any of the maps, it looks like a giant mountain. Maybe it's like the Mount Wilson Trail, straight up and kind of coming straight down. But it's helpful for me to think about the rate at where we're at right now. We're still in the purple tier. We're at about where we were in June. This is a long haul. we're going to have to keep doing this. So I'm going to say, and like I say at every meeting, you still got to wear the mask. Still got to keep the distance out there. We're so close. You can't let ourselves up now. The longer we do this, the shorter the pandemic will be. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst.
Madam Mayor?
Please. Councilmember Garcia.
So yes, yesterday, Monday, the 23rd of February, was the Community Services Commission meeting, and I attended the meeting. Vice Chair Rowinski presided, and it was great to see everyone's faces and the excitement of what's coming up this year for our city and for our residents. The one item of business was we had the Sierra Madre Little League President Rob Bischoff, as well as the Vice President Chris Bragg in attendance. They were requesting approval of the parade that Sierra Madre Little League typically does. It's obviously going to be different this year. One thing of note before I go into some of that is that we're trying to keep that parade as low attended as possible, which is not normal. We don't want to encourage a lot of people on the route that don't live on the route, and the routes are just going to be down Sierra Madre Boulevard. So if you can avoid attending this year, hopefully, and this year only, if you can avoid attending the parade, unless you live on the route and come out your front door, please do so. They are following, or they've provided some ways to abate any issues. There's going to be pods, and the cars are going to be graduated going down from Taylor's down to Sierra Vista Park. They're going to drive into the parking lot, receive, each car will receive something, and then they will drive on with only the majors teams, which are 3 teams that will stay behind in pods of 12. And they will have their own abbreviated opening ceremony 3 times for each pod. So they're doing everything they can in order to abate any vector of any sort. As we know, children typically aren't the vector, but it's great that the children are going to be able to get out and have fun. They started practices last week. I had 2 of my children in practice, and just to see the joy on the face of our young ones. Obviously my children is great, but all the children, it was so nice to see them out there. And it wasn't an issue to follow any of the rules, keeping their masks on, remaining socially distant, and they were just happy to be out there. But the parade will happen, as I said, with opening day. Also, we had some updates from the commission, or actually to the commission from the Community Services Department. There's some great things obviously going on that we all know about, such as the Kirsten Court project. I don't know if many people know, but that project did come out of the Community Services Commission. It had been there for about 7 years. There was a lot going on. They worked really, really hard for that to happen. And the fact that there was a groundbreaking and it's happening in full force is a point of pride to the Community Service Department and the Commission that they were able to get that off the ground and running. I had dinner down at Kirsten Court on Saturday night around 7:30, and I just want to report that the construction wasn't abating any business down there. The businesses were full, and there was lively, and there was parking. I parked right on the boulevard, even though some of the parking spots are gone, and everything looked business as usual, except for the big green fence around Kirsten Court. As Councilmember Krieb stated, the trail race is going to go forward in the fall, as far as we know. And the hope is 6 months later in 2022 for it to happen in its regular weekend, which is Memorial Day weekend. So thank you to Community Services and the Mount Wilson Trail Race Committee for working extra hard to get that 2022 race on the books. And then finally, most of us know about the Huck Finn Fishing Derby. Obviously, that's not going to happen this year for many reasons. One is those who know about trout in California, we lost about 3.5 million trout from our fisheries due to a bacterial infection. So they had to euthanize a bunch of trout So there's no trout anyhow that could be fished. Probably a camp out in close proximity is probably not the best idea this spring. So what's happening is a week-long Huck Fun Week, F-U-N-N, fun. I like to play on words. And there are going to be events much like the Halloween happenings with the crows that were set around town. There's going to be some fish set around town, and there's going to be a prize if you get one of those fish and turn it in. There's going to be a camp out planned at people's homes with s'mores kits handed out by the Community Services Department. There's going to be, submit your favorite fish recipe. There's going to be a Facebook Live. Those of you who have attended know that there is an astronomy club that shows up, and it shows our children the planets and the stars. So they're going to do something on Facebook Live that's planned as well. So just because we're holed up in our pods in our homes and staying socially distant doesn't mean that Community Services is resting. They're getting things done, and it was a very productive meeting, and I was honored to be there. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia. Sounds like they are very busy. Mayor Pro Tem Gus, do you have anything?
I have no report, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thanks. And so what I'd like to do is I'm just going to give, for my report, I just wanted to share a little bit about George Maurer. Again, we opened our meeting in honor of him, and we'll also close our meeting in honor of him. But I wanted to ask if anyone is planning on calling in for public comment for any items that are not on the agenda. If you can call in now and or prepare to speak, we can get that moving, and Mr. Milan can assist us there. Well, I'm sharing a little bit about George Maurer. I imagine all of us knew him in one way or the other. But again, he was a 3-time mayor, and he was also a 12-year city council member. He had just celebrated his 98th birthday, and we did lose him on February 14th. And he was already planning for his 100th birthday, which I understand. But he truly was dedicated. He had decades of volunteerism and service to Sierra Madre, and that was shown through his work at the local government level, of course, but also with organizations like the VFW 3208, because he served in the Navy in World War II. He was very active in the Kiwanis, emergency and paramedic services, and of course, the volunteer fire department. His daughter, Mickey Peretta, she shared a few stories with me, and one I really want to share with you today. But George was one of 11 siblings, and he outlived all of them. It was in 1961 when he moved to Sierra Madre, and Pop, as they call him, drove across the country from New Jersey to Sierra Madre in a station wagon. That station wagon was the first emergency vehicle for the Sierra Madre Volunteer Fire Department. John Buchan, Bob Dewar, and George were the first EMT technicians, having completed their internships at Huntington Memorial Emergency Room. His friend Sam Tesoro, was a member of the Sierra Madre Kiwanis Club, and the members made the EMT services their project for that year. They raised the money and bought the first ambulance for the fire department. One of their first response calls was on Christmas Eve day to deliver a baby girl, and a stork decal went on the front fender. They went on to respond to an average of 400 calls a year. He has meant so much to Sierra Madre that we named an award after him, the George Maurer Lifetime Achievement Award. It is bestowed to a Sierra Madrean who has exemplified commitment to the community and embodies the spirit of volunteerism. So when any of you hear that emergency horn, if we ever toot that horn again, or you see his retired decked out golf cart driving through town, we can just give him a cheers and thank Mayor George Maurer for his service to the city of Sierra Madre. So with that, we'll move on to public comment. And Mr. Milan, do we have any callers calling in for any public comment for items not on the agenda, or do we have anyone raising their hands on the video call?
Madam Mayor, we do. We have Mr. David Gordon on the line.
Great, Mr. Gordon, who I just saw yesterday.
I'll patch him through now. Thank you. Mr. Gordon, please follow the prompts to unmute.
Unmute, there we are.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Okay,
You are now live.
okay. So I'm president of the Sierra Madre Playhouse, and although we may be physically closed, we have been very, very active in all kinds of ways. We do each month a short story read by an actor or several and with illustrations on the screen. And last night we had the premiere of a short story called Back Porch, absolutely superb. And I would recommend that everybody go to our website where these things live on and check in. We do that once a month. Once a week, we do a poetry reading, quite a short poem. And it's, again, very, very professionally produced. Next is the fact that we are still active with our volunteer corps and wish to add to our volunteer corps. So if anybody who's listening would like to do some volunteering for the Playhouse, please get in touch with the Playhouse. Just go to the website and leave a message. Next thing is that some very kind people, including a city councillor, decided that when their birthday comes, they would celebrate by asking people to make, rather than a present, to make a donation to the Sierra Madre Playhouse. And I'd like to thank Council Member Krebs for having done that, and somebody else has also done that. And we are incredibly grateful for them to do this. It's a way of linking ourselves to the community and the community with us. Last thing is that we have, thank you, received permission from the city of Sierra Madre to do an outside performance in July. We think that by July, people might be prepared to attend a performance that is outside, socially distanced. And so with the help of the city, we will be putting on several weeks performances of a play that will raise people's spirits if we're going to be doing You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. So thank you very much to the city for allowing us to do this. I think we'll all do well from that event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Milan, do we have anyone else waiting in line in the queue?
Madam Mayor, at this time, we don't have anyone else wishing to make a public comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent calendar under action items. Madam City Clerk Aguilar, would you like to present that?
Yes. On this evening's consent calendar, there are 3 items for the council's consideration. Agenda consent item A, consideration of resolution 2108 approving certain demands, and it is recommended that the city council approve payment of city warrants in the aggregate amount of $298,159.51. Sierra Madre Library warrants in the aggregate amount of $11,661.16, and payroll transfer in the aggregate amount of $427,931.85 for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. Agenda item B is consideration and approval of award of contract to develop the America's Water Infrastructure Act, Risk and Resilience Assessments, and Emergency Response Plans. Say that 3 times. And staff recommends that the City Council award the professional services agreement to develop the America's Water Infrastructure Act, Risk and Resilience Assessments, and Emergency Response Plans to SA Associates for a not to exceed amount of $36,000. And finally, consent item C is the treasurer's report for the quarter ending September 30th, 2020. It is recommended that the City Council receive and file this report. That concludes the consent presentation.
Thank you, City Clerk Aguilar. I wanted to find out before we I had questions from the City Council. Is Treasurer Mario on the line? Did he join us today? Just wanted to see if he wanted to add anything on that presentation for the treasurer's report. I don't think he is on. Okay, so back to City Council. Do we have any questions on consent item A on certain demands?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Garcia?
So on the agenda, it's consideration of resolution 21-08, approving certain demands. On the resolution that I have in my agenda packet, it's entitled Resolution 21-12.
Madam City Clerk, do you have clarification as to which is the correct resolution number?
I do see that. Thank you, Councilmember Garcia. It is consideration of Resolution 2112.
Sorry, I didn't bring it up earlier. I just noticed it during the meeting.
No, thank you. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention.
Any other questions on consent item A, certain demands? Seeing none, any questions on item B? On the tongue twister?
Madam Mayor,
Councilmember Parkhurst?
section 3.5 of the agreement says the commencement date is February 23rd, 2021. And under term, it says it shall commence at 12 a.m. Might we make that February 24th, since if we vote on it, it would have already started as of midnight? I don't know if it's a big deal, but it seems like the timing should be, it should take effect after we vote on it. Minor point.
Just a question on that.
Councilmember Creeps?
So, Mr. City Attorney, is there a reason why it needs to include the entirety of today? I mean, maybe there's something with respect to the payment schedule, or maybe they're doing things today.
No, there's no reason. We entered into that agreement. I believe it was a couple of weeks beforehand, so that's when it was drafted. So we can definitely change the date to reflect that it's going to go into effect tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on item B? Okay. Any questions on the treasurer's report? Item C. Okay, seeing none, we can open this up for public comment. Mr. Milan, should have asked people to call in earlier, sorry.
No problem, Madam Mayor. At this time, we do not have anyone wishing to make public comment, but we should probably give callers a few seconds to call in if they wish to do so.
And as we're waiting, I'm just going to do a quick check to see if Treasurer Mario has joined us, but I don't believe so.
Madam Mayor, I've not seen anyone join or make raise their hand for public comment. I don't believe we have any public comment at this time.
Great, thank you, Mr. Milan. Bring it back to the council for discussion on any of the consent items.
Just a quick comment, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, Councilmember Garcia.
Yeah, I'd just like to applaud City Treasurer Michael Amario and our Finance Department for putting this agenda report together and articulating what's been going on with our funds when we have cash on hand. I know most places do this, but it's nice that our cash is not just sitting there not earning interest and losing money to inflation, but rather invested in very low risk, very short-term investments. We're getting some interest on our cash and reserves, so that's a great thing, rather than losing some of our money to inflation and buying power. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you, Treasurer Amario, as well as the Finance Department.
Yes, thank you. And in honor of Mayor Harabedian, he always asks about the LAIF interest rates and why it's so low, but it's good to have interest rates. And just like Councilmember Garcia has shared, we are getting some interest both on our cash and our LAIF, but yeah, recognizing that it is such a low interest rate, but it still looks like a very positive report. So if there are no other discussion comments on this, I can take a motion for approval. Actually, and Councilmember Parkhurst, so it would be, I think we're doing a motion with the amendment to add February 24th to the approval of the award, if that's how someone would like to pose the first motion.
I would move to approve the consent calendar with the change to item B proposed by Councilmember Parkhurst.
Thank you, Councilmember Krebs. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you, Councilmember Garcia. And Madam City Clerk, if you can do a roll call vote, please.
Yes, ma'am. The motion to approve the consent calendar with the amendment to the professional services agreement to change the date to February 24th, 2021. Mayor Rachel Arizmendi.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jean Goss.
Aye.
Councilmember Edward Garcia.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly Krebs.
Aye.
And Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Aye.
Madam Mayor, the motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is our public hearing, and I believe Director Gonzalez, you'll be presenting on this item.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. We do have a brief presentation for you this evening. And basically what we're going to be doing is focusing on some of the potential housing site alternatives that were addressed and referenced in your agenda report. And if we can go ahead and advance the presentation and go to the next slide. So the presentation includes a recap of the housing element process, including addressing the question, what is the housing element? We will also discuss the state mandate that allocates the number of units assigned to each city, referred to as the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA. We will share the potential housing element opportunity sites that were vetted by the then City Council at 3 prior meetings. Those sites consist of multifamily infill opportunities, inclusive of Measure V boundaries, housing on congregational land, accessory dwelling units, and staff is also introducing a new alternative B recommended by the Planning Commission that focuses outside of the Measure V boundary. So we do have 2 presenters this evening. Each will provide a self-introduction and identify their role in the project. So let's go ahead and go to our next slide and our first presenter.
Thank you, Vincent. This is Karen Warner of Karen Warner Associates. I am the city's housing element consultant. I've worked with the city on several of its past housing elements, all of which we were able to get state approval of, and we're certainly hoping for the same on this element. So most of you have heard this before, but I think it bears repeating if there's people at home looking. Watching. The housing element is part of the city's general plan. The city is mandated per state statutes to plan to meet existing and projected housing needs of all economic segments of the community. So that's kind of the foundation of the general plan housing element. It consists of 5 chapters: the review of accomplishments, the housing needs assessment, evaluation of constraints to housing, identification of sites, and then development of an 8-year program strategy. So the current housing element is considered the 5th cycle, and it's 2014 to 2021. And this one we're working on is the 6th cycle, which will go 2021 to 2029. And then lastly, the housing element is required to undergo review by the State Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, for compliance with statutes. Slide. There are significant benefits for having a state-approved element. These have gotten more and more, they've gotten to be more and more carrots and more sticks for state compliance. There's a presumption of a legally adequate housing element in the courts if you have a state-approved element. And if the courts were to invalidate your element, there's a loss of local control. So the courts will place a moratorium on all building permits. You will have a suspension of discretionary land use authority until the element's brought into compliance. Oftentimes, housing elements don't make it to the courts. There's out-of-court settlement agreements with the litigants, which often result in mandatory rezonings and affordable production requirements. There's protection from attorney general litigation on the housing element, which is what happened most recently to the city of Huntington Beach, where the Attorney General was suing the city for a non-compliant element. NHCD approval allows the city to maintain discretionary review of our affordable projects. It allows the city to be eligible for a variety of state housing funds, and Sierra Madre has accessed several state housing grants recently, SB2 planning grants and the LEAP grant, which it would not have been able to access without a state compliant element. And then lastly, compliant element allows the city not to carry over its regional housing needs figure from one cycle to the next. Next slide. It's important also to note what the housing element doesn't do. It does not require the city to build the units that are planned for. It does not provide the actual funding to the city. And it does not authorize construction on housing element sites. Any project would need to go through the city approval process and the environmental review process. Next slide. So who needs affordable housing in Sierra Madre? People who work in town and can't afford to live here, teachers, nurses, retail and hospitality workers, special needs households such as senior citizens, and children of longtime Sierra Madre residents that may want to move back to the town in which they were raised and cannot find anything affordable here. Next slide. So the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA, is really the foundation of the 8-year housing element update. And these are the numbers that originate from the state of California and then are divided into the different regional areas. So in this area, we're SCAG, Southern California Association of Governments, is the regional body that's responsible for distributing the RHNA growth projections. The RHNA reflects the minimum number of housing units the housing element is required to provide zoning for, and it's one of the primary criteria necessary to receive the state support of the element. Next slide. So this shows the city's RHNA in the current 5th cycle. You can see in the 3rd column, it was for 55 additional units, and those units are divided into the 4 income categories. The city's RHNA progress, you can see that the city overproduced in the low income category, and that's largely because of accessory dwelling units, and a little bit underproduced in the moderate with 3, which was the Highland Muse project. Overall, the production is actually pretty good compared to a lot of cities. And part of that, well, a good part of it is the accessory dwelling units, but also the growth projections for 55 units were really, reasonable with compared to the city's actual growth. Next slide. SCAG has just adopted the final RHNA. So we can see here that the numbers went up from 55 units to 204 units. So that's what we're, looking at identifying sites for in this element. And the sites we look at are subject to default densities. So sites that are deemed suitable for very low and low income households need to have a minimum density of 20 units an acre. And moderate needs to have a minimum density of 12 units an acre. The exception, of course, are accessory dwelling units. Next slide. And this just shows a comparison of other cities' RHNAs for the 5th and 6th cycle. So you can see Sierra Madre is not alone. There's a lot of cities that had, dramatic increases in their regional needs figures. And, SCAG as a region had a RHNA that was 3 times higher what it had the prior cycle. Next slide. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Claire to talk about the site options A and B.
Thank you, Karen. So this is site option A, which consists of a mixture of sites both inside and outside of Measure B boundary. Next slide. Site number 1 has 4 properties on the West Mariposa Avenue, also known as the Mariposa parking lot, just south of the boulevard. 2 of the parcel are city-owned and 2 of the parcel are privately owned parking lot. The combined site has a potential of 25 units at 20 units per acre, or 38 units at 30 units per acre. There is an option to develop a concept of an affordable housing overlay zone, for example, to reach a higher density at 30 units per acre if certain percentage of a housing is affordable. Please note that this site is within Measure V boundary and it would require a vote of the public. Next slide. Site number 2 shows 9 properties on the 200 block of West Mariposa Avenue. The combined site consists of 25 existing housing units with a potential net gain of 23 units at 20 dwelling per acre, or 48 units at 30 units per acre. 2 of the parcels were identified at the current housing element. Therefore, to carry them over to the 2021-2029 element, it must allow 20 dwelling unit by right for inclusion of 20% of a low income unit. Next slide. Site number 3 identifies 5 properties on the corner of Mariposa and South Baldwin Avenue. This is the location of the post office site that is within Measure V. The combined site has a potential of 22 net new units at 20 dwelling unit per acre, or 35 net units at 30 unit per acre. If developed, there would be an opportunity for the post office services to be incorporated as a component of a mixed use development. Next slide. Site number 4 identified 9 properties on Suffolk Avenue, just east of Baldwin Avenue. Several of the property owners in this area has contacted the city regarding potential lot consolidation and redevelopment with multifamily housing. The combined site consists of 41 units with a potential net gain of 27 units. And later on, we will see an example. Site number 5 designates 7 properties on East Montecito Avenue in the manufacturing zone. The site is a location of the 2 corrugated metal barn, one being the stats storage, and next to it is a storage building. On the south side, there is a recreation vehicle parking lot and commercial buildings. This site is within Measure V and it will require the approval of the voters. The combined site yields 2 density options, 35 unit per acre, 35 units at 20 dwelling unit per acre, or 78 units at 30 dwelling unit per acre. Next slide. Site number 6 designates 1 parcel on the West Sierra Madre Boulevard, where it ends at where Park Avenue dead ends to Sierra Madre Boulevard. This is where the Palm apartment is at, and it is outside of Measure V boundary. The existing density of the property is approaching 20 dwelling unit per acre. With the redesignation to 20 dwelling unit per acre, it only yields 1 additional unit, but with upzoning it to 30 dwelling unit per acre, the site will provide a potential net gain of 10 housing units. The property owner has expressed interest in upzone for a higher density as well. The next slide. So site number 7 is a new site that will identified. It will designate 1 property on the southwest corner of North Baldwin and West Laurel Avenue outside of Measure V. This site has been added to our inventory because the property owner has approached the city to develop a multi-unit residential project. The site has currently has one single family on a R3 zoned parcel, and the redesignation at 20 dwelling per acre will yield 5 net residential unit. Next slide. So here is a summary of potential sites inventory that designate a combination of 20 dwelling unit per acre and 30 dwelling unit per acre. Note that 3 of the sites are within Measure V boundary, and it will require approval by the voters to enable redesignation as at a higher density. In total, it identified 217 housing unit. Next slide. So after receiving recommendation from the Planning Commission and also comments from the community workshop, staff has prepared an option B, selecting sites only outside of Measure V boundary. And they are sites number 2, which is the 200 block of Mariposa Avenue, site number 4 on the Suffolk Avenue, site number 6, the Palms apartment, and site number 7 at the corner of Baldwin and Laurel from option A. And plus an affordable housing overlay zone on parking lots on congregational land. Staff has selected 4 out of the 7 sites on congregational land that are more suitable. Site A is a destination of affordable housing overlay zone on San Rita's southerly parking area that is accessed from East Grandview Avenue. The parking area is approximately 32,000 square feet and would accommodate 24 housing units at a density of 32 dwelling unit per acre. Site number B is the United Methodist Church. Their northerly parking lot accessed from North Michelinda Avenue. The parking area is approximately 28,000 square feet and would accommodate 21 housing unit at 32 dwelling unit per acre. Site number C is designating the parcel just north of the Old North Church. The parking area is accessed from the North Hermosa Avenue, and it's about 31,000 square feet, which would accommodate 22 housing units at 32 unit per acre. And the last site is site number D, which is the parking area of the Bethany Church, accessed both from Highland Avenue and West Montecito Avenue. The parking area is approximately 36,000 square feet and would accommodate 27 housing unit. Next slide. So the combined site with the parking lot and the sites outside of Measure V, it generates a potential net gain of 185 units. Next slide. So here is the summary that compare option A and option B, which option A is including a mixture of sites within the Measure V, and option B is all the sites are outside of Measure V boundary. So both alternatives are feasible and they are not far from meeting the total low, moderate RHNA target. Now I'll turn it back to Karen.
Thank you, Claire. we've been at this for about a year now, and we've gone through and looked at probably every site in Sierra Madre, and particularly with an eye towards, looking for areas outside of Measure V. And the areas that we were thinking, might have potential were all in residential neighborhoods, but they really didn't meet the criteria under the state statutes for being likely to recycle within the 8-year planning period. All of these areas that were looked at are developed with existing uses. Much of the existing housing is in good condition, and intensification to 20 unit and acre densities yielded, very nominal unit increases. To include sites in the inventory, we need to be able to demonstrate to the state that the existing use does not impede redevelopment at the site. And because the city doesn't have a track record supporting residential redevelopment, we felt that these other areas that were evaluated really wouldn't meet that threshold criteria. Next slide. And then we just wanted to show you, when we talk about densities, what some of the existing developed densities are in town. This is a proposal for a 5-unit apartment on Suffolk. This is one of our sub areas that we're suggesting for designation at 20 units an acre. And this would be a 15-unit an acre project. Next slide. The Wisteria Garden Apartments on Sierra Madre Boulevard is an existing 2-story development that is 29 units an acre. Next slide. And then, of course, there's the Kensington, which is 40 units an acre. Senior housing has smaller unit sizes, so the densities are almost always much higher than non-senior housing. Next slide. And then Sierra Vista Senior Housing is a 100% affordable project, and it is 2 stories at the street level, and then it terraces up to 3 stories in the rear, and it's a 43 unit an acre project. Next slide. This just summarizes the Planning Commission direction, which was to look at increasing our accessory dwelling unit projections from what we had was 12 units a year. And we've done that now. We've looked at this most recent year. The city had, quite a few ADU building permits, that we feel that with the addition of an ADU program with incentives for creation of ADUs, we can increase the ADU projections to 15 a year. The Planning Commission was interested in the affordable housing overlay on congregational land. And the direction was to select sites outside of the Measure V boundary due to the anticipated difficulty in getting the public support for a vote. Next slide. And just to review accessory dwelling units, this is a really important part of Sierra Madre's affordable housing stock. The SCAG has developed an ADU affordability analysis, which we're permitted to use. So if we're projecting 15 units a year, we can project that 70% of those would be affordable to lower and moderate income households. So projecting that out over an 8-year planning period, we can assume 84 ADUs count towards the city's low and moderate income RHNA needs. Next slide. And this then factors in ADUs into the option A and option B. So option A, which is what had been presented to council previously with the addition of Site 7, we have the capacity for 217 units. With the addition of the 84 units, it brings us up to 301. The option B, with the addition of ADUs, brings it up to 269. And on the bottom, you can see our low and moderate income RHNA obligation is 153 units. We want to provide a buffer because as sites develop, if they aren't developed with affordable units, and we've counted them in the housing element sites inventory for affordable units, we need to make that up. So we need to have some extra sites there as a buffer. So adding in a 30% buffer, our low and moderate income RHNA sites target is 199 units. And you can see both option A and B with the addition of the ADUs meet that goal. Next slide. And this is just a summary of the concept of affordable housing on congregational land. There's a bill that passed that allows for reduction in parking on congregational sites for the development of affordable housing. So it makes it much easier to build housing on church sites. The city had a virtual meeting, invited all 7 congregations to attend. We had 3 in attendance, and they generally supported the overlay concept. The staff has most recently heard back from 2 of the congregations that have brought it to their trustees, and one's, they haven't taken a vote, but one of the congregations said they are, generally interested, but need to, pursue it a little bit more. Another congregation had questions about it, but it does seem like potential on at least a few of these sites. Next slide. And this just shows an example of a recent project on a church site that was approved. The interesting thing is the way these projects are generally structured is the congregation enters into a land lease with a nonprofit developer. And then the developer provides other improvements to the property. So in this case, in addition to developing the 66 lower income senior apartments, they provided a community center and common open space. Next slide. And here's another project where the nonprofit provided a new parish hall, a community garden, and overall improvements to the church facilities. Next slide. And then just to recap, we did have a virtual community workshop with 25 attendees. And one of the questions we asked was, what strategies should the city pursue to meet its RHNA? And you can see that increasing densities in select multifamily neighborhoods was #1, allowing housing on select commercial sites, and providing incentives for accessory dwelling units were a close second. Next slide. And this is just a sampling of some of the specific comments we received at the workshop. And there's a summary of all the workshop comments that we received on the city's housing element website. Next slide. And just to kind of put it all in context, the housing element is triggering some other updates to the minor updates to the city's general plan. There's some new requirements in the city's safety element to address climate adaptation and resiliency and very high fire severity zones. We are required to look at any disadvantaged communities in Sierra Madre, which there are none identified. So the environmental justice piece will, acknowledge that. There's minor updates to the circulation element to reflect the new vehicle mile travel thresholds that the city has adopted. Any changes that we make to your land use and zoning categories will need to be reflected in the land use element and on your land use map. And then lastly, there will be an environmental impact report that's prepared on the housing element and these other general plan amendments. Next slide. And so what we're hoping to gain tonight is some direction from the council on the sites inventory so that we can prepare the draft housing element. It's about 80% there now. We just need a little more direction on the sites. And then that will be sent up to the state. They have 60 days to review it. And while it's up at the state, the environmental document will be prepared. It'll come back to the Planning Commission and City Council in late summer. And the deadline for adoption is October 15th. So that's kind of what we're working against. Of course, if there are Measure V sites in the element, then the state would issue a letter of conditional approval pending the Measure V election, which is targeted for November 2022. And after which then the state would find the city in compliance. And that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Warner. Thank you, Lynn and Director Gonzalez. I imagine we have a lot of questions. This was a very loaded report. And so I do want to open it up, and I'll go ahead and start and ask Ms. Warner. There's a question I had, and unfortunately I don't have slide numbers on here, but it's when you incorporated the ADU potential units and projecting that at 84 with 15 per year. Just wanted to get clarification on that. There's a section on the, it compares option A and option B. And if you can just explain underneath that, it talks about the 199 units. And I just wasn't, if you can just clarify as to what that is.
Sure. And 15 per year, that because we have the, proposed subdivision at the monastery, and then we have Stonehouse that will address the above modern needs. Maybe we can, Claire, are you doing the PowerPoint? If we could bring that slide back up, the chart comparison. It's towards the very end. No, not the other way. I think it's about slide 30.
Oh yeah, it's close. It's close.
Okay, keep going. We're getting close.
There.
Okay, this one, right, yay. Okay, so this is the ADUs on the first line of 84. So each option A and option B gets to count ADUs. That's regardless of the identification of the site. Okay. So option A had 217 unit potential on its sites, and if you add in the 84, then it equals 301, and similarly in option B. The 199 on the very bottom, that's the target we're looking at for the low mod RHNA numbers.
Okay, and I thought I also saw 204 somewhere. That wasn't the low mod target?
204 is the city's entire RHNA, including the above moderate. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Lots of numbers.
I know. Okay. Who else has questions?
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Garcia.
Just a quick one, I think it's probably for Vincent. Looking at option B and I guess it would be called parcel D or site D rather, that's a Bethany Church. As we can see on the map, that part of it does overlay within Measure V, and it feels like part of that is maybe not parking, but administrative offices and maybe the sanctuary. So since Measure D is parcel D or is within Measure V area, would there need to be a vote there?
That's a good question. I don't believe it would if we're like targeting an overlay zone specific to parking areas at the parking lot. And it looks like, from what I can tell, parcel D, the frontage along North Baldwin Avenue is abutting the Measure V area. So I'm still thinking that the entire site is outside of Measure V.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Member Parkhurst.
So first, as a new member on the council, I want to acknowledge all the work that went in on this with the previous council. I know that this has gone on for close to a year, and all of the work on the planning commission. And I've tried to become RENA smart on this. So I've done everything, trying to get up to speed. So if I make some mistakes, it is just in my coming up to speed on things. But Ms. Warner, I had a question for you, or maybe it is Director Gonzalez. When you had mentioned in here that we would have to go forward with an EIR eventually. And if when we go forward with the EIR, regardless of which option we choose, can we have the other one as the alternative in the EIR? So that when it is considered, when the EIR comes out, now you're looking at both options in case HCD has a problem with one of them. The other one is less likely to, or at least it will have gone through the EIR and help us with the timing and getting things approved.
That's an excellent idea. Yeah, there's no reason we couldn't look at whatever option is not the preferred option as one of the alternatives in the EIR. Sure.
And as others might be thinking of a question, Ms. Morris had another question. I remember when the idea of building on church property was an option, and we're like, wow, that sounds brilliant. And I'm happy to hear that we had some stakeholders that attended a meeting. But at the time, wasn't there a concern as to that there could be a challenge with this? Was there a problem with extending this out to congregational owned facility, or am I confusing that with something else?
A legal challenge, or what kind of challenge?
I don't remember. I just thought when we talked about it that it was an idea that could be possible, but not sure if it was. But I mean, at this point, it sounds like this really is a tangible way to look at our RENA numbers, at least. So if I am not remember that correctly, that's great. I just thought I recalled that.
And I think when it was originally presented as an idea, things have changed a lot recently. I mean, when we first came up with the idea, it's because there was a bill in the legislature to allow this to happen by right. And that bill, because of COVID, like many bills, were kind of put on hold. Then we learned that there's a group in Pasadena that has been pursuing this in the city of Pasadena. And we welcomed them to our meeting, and they spoke about what they've been going through with the congregational land overlay there. Then this other bill did pass that allows for reduced parking. Then we learned more about the viability of this happening in other communities. So I think it was just a timing when we originally presented the idea to council, it was just kind of gaining traction.
Okay, that's really helpful to hear that.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Creeps.
I have a couple of questions. One to sort of piggyback a little bit on the mayor's question. I understand a big component of the report is proving out or demonstrating the viability of the sites that we are choosing, and how much of that is dependent on sort of buy-in or approval or positive vibes from the landowners, and how much of it is sort of independent of that, given that, as you mentioned earlier in the presentation, this is a plan, not required, that nothing is specifically required to actually be developed. And so I'm just wondering about the balance between getting buy-in versus proposing things that maybe we don't necessarily have specific buy-in.
Right. It's always best if you have owner buy-in. It's certainly not required. But what we are required to demonstrate for every site is that the existing use is not an impediment. So one way to show that is the owner is, supportive of this. If we don't have that, then there's a little bit higher bar that we need to go through to say that existing use isn't an impediment.
So with respect to the congregational sites, I suppose that part of that, clearing that bar would be, as you mentioned, the traction that this idea has sort of gained, you know, regionally or locally, and there has been successful implementation of this, albeit not, you know, not in our city.
Yes, and you know, we're going to try to get your element up to the state sooner rather than later. So if there are concerns about some of these sites, I mean, the examples that I showed were much larger church sites than yours. Yours are fairly small. So that, you know, could be a concern. We don't know yet.
And then just one other question, again, on option B. I know, you know, the direction or the, you know, the reason for sort of preparing option B was to try to avoid sites within Measure V. Just wondering if there was any thought given to site number 3 in option A, which is the post office, which site, you know, in option A includes both, you know, the post office area and the parking lot, which is in Measure V, as well as the adjacent sites to the south, which I guess are outside of Measure V. Was there any consideration in including the 2 sites south of the post office, or is that just not, you know, a meaningful net increase in units?
As I recall, I think those 2 parcels on their own are pretty small.
Okay.
Now, those sites were going to be substandard.
Just because of the not providing enough volume in terms of number of units?
Yes.
Ms. Warner, were you going to add anything to that?
Wherever there is existing residential use and we're showing it as a site, again, we have to, you know, demonstrate why the existing use is likely to recycle. There's also a requirement now when the use does recycle, that if there was a lower income household living there within the last 5 years, that unit or units needs to be replaced as an affordable unit. So that can serve as a disincentive for redevelopment of, you know, older housing that may be occupied by lower income folks.
So I'm sure we have a few more questions, but let me just ask if you have people that would like to call in for public comment on this item. If you want to prepare to call in, you may be on hold for a little bit, but I just want to encourage those that have public comment to call in now. Councilmember Garcia, I think you had a question.
Yes, just Ms. Warner, if you can repeat your last statement, I just want to make sure I understand that completely. If the most recent resident, or if there was a resident within the last 5 years?
Most recent and through the last 5 years. Yes. Yes. So it's similar to state density bonus law, but now, and it's not that it's dealt with specifically in the housing element, because it's not until you have an actual project, but it is something to think about when you're identifying sites.
Questions, Mayor Pro Tem Goss?
Just one for Ms. Warner. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but you know your business. I'm just wondering, all these units in either plan, what is the likelihood that in the future they will be built out?
Well, I mean, if you look at the city's current cycle, you had 80 units, 80. And a good number of those were accessory dwelling units. So it would be a huge jump from
Right.
80 to, you know, over 200. So yeah, I think that, you know, the pace of development in Sierra Madre is fairly modest. and I don't anticipate it changing drastically.
I guess as part of that question, I'm wondering to what extent you would expect the state to come in with more, a bigger stick if we were doing our traditionally slow movement in development.
It's it's not that the city has to make sure all the units are developed. You have to set the table through zoning, and not constrain development. So the concern is Measure V constraining development. So that's something, you know, we had to justify in the last element. We only had to identify one multifamily site at 20 units an acre last go around. This time we're looking at a lot more. So that could be, you know, a concern of the state's.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, can I have a follow-up to that?
Yeah, please, Councilmember Parkhurst.
So if we go forward with option A or something that includes items within Measure V, and we have the vote in 2022 and it fails, what happens to our housing element then?
So what we would have in your element is referred to as an adequate sites program. And that program would step by step talk about, you know, what is going to happen with the Measure V election. And you have 3 years from the time the housing element's due to implement a rezone program. So that would be through October 2024. If the Measure B vote fails, you still have additional time to come up with a plan B.
Okay,
Madam Mayor,
Thank you.
Councilmember Creeps.
just a follow-up to the follow-up. So, and if that were the case, would we then basically restart the program with the state authority so that we would have to present something alternative and they would have to weigh in, and basically sort of pretending that we're back, you know, this summer at that point? Or is there something different now that we have sort of a conditional approval and, you know, a shorter time frame?
Well, I haven't gone through that before, but it would be a very focused amendment to your housing element, you know, just dealing with the sites. But you would maintain the conditional approval for 3 years until you're, you know, because you're going through a process to provide adequate sites.
And further to Councilmember Parker's point earlier, would the EIR, were we to do the sort of dual EIR now, would that EIR still be usable for an alternative? Like if we were to then maybe revert to some version of option B or a mix of A and B, would that EIR be able to be used in that process, or would we have to start that process over?
I would imagine you could do an addendum to the EIR.
Thank you.
All right, great questions and a lot of things answered for myself. I know that. Do we have any more questions before we open it up to public comment?
Yeah, maybe just one more, Mayor.
Councilmember Garcia.
Kind of the fourth piggyback. So if we're thinking about option B, and most of that is within residential neighborhoods existing. Let's say that Measure B is, or option B is what we go with. And I know you're not a prognosticator, but let's think about the next cycle, right? What's the likelihood that there's gonna definitely have to be a Measure V vote next cycle, if we go with B this cycle, right?
Right, it keeps getting harder, that's for sure. I mean, you look at the comparison of the two, you're right, yeah.
So very high likelihood, if not almost certain.
Unless there's something else that opens up in the city, but yeah, you're right. I think eventually, and the other thing that's been happening is there was the SB 330 Housing Crisis Act, which originally had in it that voter initiatives were not an eligible reasoning for not being able to address your housing needs. Well, that somehow got out of it. It could come back. Growth control measures are no longer permitted as a reason to not meet your housing needs.
And what does that mean? Does that mean that cities sort of find themselves, in between a rock and a hard place where they have sort of voter approved, measures such as Measure V that they have to comply with, and also have to comply with the state in a way that isn't, that doesn't conflict with that? So, or is that meant to, in essence, overrule or invalidate those voter approved measures in the context of something like this?
Yeah, well, it hasn't happened yet, but a growth control measure would be overruled. I mean, that now is in the statutes. So for now, it's a matter of, being able to demonstrate you have adequate sites, and it's a high bar. It's going to be difficult this go around.
But to Councilmember Garcia's point, I mean, at some point in the cycling of these, and I know they're 8 years, and so it seems like it's a long way away, we're literally going to run out of room, just given the size of our town, right? I mean, there's only so many sites
Right.
that are going to ever be
Right.
able
Yeah.
to be included. So at some point,
Yeah.
this process is going to have to acknowledge for cities like ours, there's not an unlimited sort of recycling of
Right.
sites.
Yeah, and it's most cities are looking towards commercial areas for multifamily housing because they're just don't have the room in the neighborhoods.
Okay, any other questions? We'll still have time to discuss after public comment, but I just want to make sure any questions that are asked are posed now. Okay, so I'll ask Mr. Milan if we have anyone in the queue for public comment.
Madam Mayor, please stand by. Callers, if you wish to make a public comment, please raise your hand now. Madam Mayor, we do not seem to have anyone wishing to make public comment at this time.
Pressing issue, very exciting for our town. Okay, all right, so we'll bring it back to council for discussion. And I can go ahead and start first, and probably mine is not more of discussion, more than my opinion now at this point, but you could take it from here. I will share that initially I was very much thinking, we've worked on this for so long, and option A is the direction we should go in. I never liked the idea of going back out to a vote for Measure V. However, the one thing that's sitting in the back of my mind is if we say, yes, let's go with this option B, is that if we have to come back, as you've been talking and with the questions or the answers that have come with the questions, and we have to go out for a vote again, I just would not want this to be a special election where we'd have to pay for it and it would be on the backs of the city of Sierra Madre. There was some kind of blessing with the order of this and thinking we can go out to a vote with Measure V with the general election, and we wouldn't have to pay for a special election. But with that being said, I think the two pieces that are swaying me towards option B now is the consideration of the ADU. Being able to add those numbers in makes a huge difference. And again, with the affordable housing overlay and the congressional land, I just remember there was so much of a sticking point. And that's why I asked that question. But the fact that we had some churches that actually showed up and there's a willingness, appreciate Ms. Warner showing some of those pictures, both of the 30 units per acre, because that's helpful to visualize it, but also with some churches that have worked on some of these projects. And if we don't have to go out for a vote for this, there's something to be respected of the vote of the people. But knowing there's also a change of time. And that's why I was also comfortable going with option A, saying, let's go out to a vote to the residents and the citizens of this city, because we are having demands that are requiring us to make changes. And we're in a different scenario than we were 10 years ago or at the time when when Measure V came out. I understand the intent of it. I think there can be ways to work with building in Measure V if we absolutely have to. Again, seeing what 20 units per acre looks like and what 30 units per acre looks like. And if we are going to have mixed use, I mean, the idea of having mixed use in the downtown area, I think is a great way of looking at building in the downtown area if we have to. But given that we can add in the ADU projections and that churches are willing to consider some affordable housing on their property, I am definitely leaning now towards option B. And so again, we can have more discussion on that. I'd love to hear if someone has some alternatives that I should consider, but that's kind of where I'm sitting right now.
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Garcia.
Yeah, as a newer council member, I think it would be helpful, to me at least, to kind of hear the historical perspective of option A and how that came together, and then how option B actually came together, right, with the planning commission and our consultant, because as I read the agenda packet, option A was already brought to the council. Council was recommending, but they needed a little more work on it. So the historical perspective, I think, for me would be helpful, and what work had gone into it and what your feelings were at the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll either ask Director Gonzalez or City Manager England to share, or even Mayor Pro Tem Goss. But just like I shared in my thought and opinion, at the time, we didn't really have feedback from the churches. We asked for the overlay, affordable housing overlay, to be considered into it. I did not know how likely that was, at least that's me personally. And the ADU projections is newer information. That's not information that we included in the calculations for the first proposal. And again, I was ready to go with the first proposal, but given that we have some of these, to me, is newer pieces to consider as part of it, is where I would say historically that's the difference between where I see A and B. But I definitely would like anyone else to chime in. Again, Mayor Pro Tem Goss or Director Gonzalez, City Manager England, or anyone else who has some insight.
Well, I'll throw in 10 cents here. Yeah, I agreed with the option A proposal last time we discussed this. I am not afraid to take this to the voters. I am not certain that the voters would have a different take on Measure V even today if it was being voted. The town's gone through very significant demographic changes since then. And the state political system, these kinds of things have changed. There's been a lot of change. So I don't want to add, just personally, I don't want to add density to Sierra Madre. I think it would not be good for us. I think it detracts from our small town environment. But if I had to make a choice, which is what we have to do, because as Councilmember Creed is putting it, we are between a rock and a hard place. The state is mandating that we do something that really nobody wants in the city, and that is increased density. So if I have my hands tied behind my back and somebody was forcing me to vote for higher density, it's going to be in the commercial areas. It's not going to be up on the parking lot in St. Rita where you have R1 all around it, whether St. Rita likes it or not, or out at the parking lot of United Methodist where across the street you have R1 all the way up Montecito. I just don't think that I think the risk towards what our people, at least some of our people would be facing, would lean more towards the commercial district. And the way I look at it now, I'm still on Measure A. I guess my thought on this is that, and as was pointed out, we really lose nothing by taking this to the people. A, we're showing them respect by giving them the vote. B, if we lose this, then we go back to the drawing board. And as I think Ms. Werner stated, we really can start all over. And I don't think we're going to be facing a whole lot of penalties. So I am not as sanguine about the churches and their position on this. I don't think they speak for the R1 neighborhoods around them. And I'm not so sure that they speak for their parishioners, to tell you the truth.
And before we have additional discussion on this, I understand that we had a public comment, and I do want to open it up, just considering how challenging it's been with our technology. So, Mr. Milan, do we have someone calling in?
I was informed by the city clerk that somebody is wishing to make public comment, but I don't see them on the call yet. So perhaps we should give folks a bit more time to get dialed in.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and move back then to discussion if any other council member would like to comment.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Creeps.
I mean, the segue from public comment, I think is a good point for me to make. I'm very concerned that I feel like we haven't really heard much at all from the public, at least well, since I've been involved. I mean, I would, appreciate hearing if there were more public comment or involvement in the prior meetings or the prior considerations. But certainly, as between the Zoom workshop and then obviously tonight's meeting, I just really don't have a good sense at all, where the public stands on this, and particularly, where they stand in reference to the exception to Measure V that we would need to get a vote on. And while I agree that I'm not afraid to take it to the people, and I do think that it's nice to give the people that kind of participation, I do worry a little bit about expending the political capital, if you will, of the city and its key influencers on a measure to to become into technical compliance with the state requirements, and again in a way that really no one's all that excited about, versus other things we may need to take to the public during the next whatever time frame you want to call it, 2 to 5 to 7 years. So I do worry a little bit about having to put resources into that kind of education campaign and ballot initiative instead of maybe something that would be more beneficial overall to the city. I think, but for Measure V, I would very much agree with option A, because I do agree that the density should be in the commercial area, and I think of projects like the one in South Pasadena near the Gold Line Mission stop on Mission Street, where Heirloom Bakery is, and that seems like something that would very much be in keeping with our community feel in terms of combined residential with a shopping or small restaurant in a nice sort of aesthetically pleasing sort of way. And those are the kinds of things that I think we could do in some of the Measure V areas, but obviously we're constrained in some ways by that. And I worry also, and I think this is shared concern by others, that without sort of a specific project like the Kensington or a project like the Mission Stop area in South Pasadena, it's going to be difficult to get people on board to conceptual idea of increasing zoning or density rather, and other variances from Measure V, just kind of in a general sort of sense. I just worry that without having a rendering of oh, here's what it would look like, I'm afraid people will worry that there's something more going on and sort of jump to something larger than it is. So that's my concern. And I based on that, even though it pushes density into places that I'd prefer not to, I think ultimately at this point I'm more in favor of option B.
Okay, and I saw, and I'm not sure if we have someone on hold right now, but I do want to ask Mr. City Manager, I think I saw you come on screen. I didn't know if you had a comment and/or if someone wanted to address the opportunities public had in RENA, because I know we've had numerous opportunities in the last couple of years, even though they're not here in full force today. So I just want to make sure I address those two things. If Mr. City Manager, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I was just going to ask Director Gonzalez to go over the outreach. We have had several opportunities for people to participate. And if he could maybe talk about that, and then talk about what, if there was a theme, what that was.
Yes. So we did conduct a public outreach effort, and we did have 25 participants. It was via Zoom. We did break out into small little, almost like workshops. Basically, people were able to respond to specific questions that we posed, and they were able to come up with responses to those, and we ranked them in terms of what was the most preferred alternative. And it went through the different options, such as congregational lands within Measure V and outside of Measure V, and also accessory dwelling units. So we did get a very large polling in that response. Not all 25 people actually voted when we came to that component of the workshop. Karen, did you have any other options that you wanted to provide?
And actually having 25 folks in a city the size of Sierra Madre participate in a housing on that workshop is pretty good. The city has a very detailed housing on the website with all the information. Any meeting that we've had with the public, it's the video is on there. The meeting that we had with the congregations. So all of that is summarized on the Housing Element website. It's a lot of times tough to get the public interested in policy issues, you know, before there's an actual project. So this isn't atypical, unfortunately. One of the things I wanted to respond to Councilwoman Krebs, when you're talking about the difficulty in visualizing what an actual, you know, development would be on a parcel for the public in a Measure V vote. When we went through this in the city of Yorba Linda, a similar voter initiative, we had different schematics prepared on several of the Measure B sites, so that that met the standards to help folks visualize what it might look like on a given site.
I believe we now have the person that's calling in for public comment. And Mr. Milan, if you can patch that person through, please.
Will do, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, caller, you're now live.
Hi. I did reach you online. I did try to call the number, but the meeting ID and number really left the screen too quickly. And so I'm sorry for interrupting your meeting this way. And I'm a latecomer with all of this. I live at 775 Woodland Drive. I do own 2 other properties in Sierra Madre that are rentals. So I was wondering, what is the monthly rent that you consider to be low cost?
Thank you for that question. And I'm not sure if that's something that we can answer. I'm going to look towards Ms. Warner if that's an answer she has, or Mr. Gonzalez. And again, we don't always answer the public comments in a way, but I think this is relevant. And I think if we have the answer, it would be helpful to hear it.
I can look that up and respond in a moment.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for that question, Ms. Radford. Okay, so back to our discussion.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Parkhurst.
So this is a tough decision, and I think that's any of us that have come on to council knew that was the case. And for those that have been on council, I know that it's been a lot of thought and discussion that went into this. And I like Councilmember Garcia's point on going to a vote and working to educate the people on where we need to, on what we need to do. I am concerned about the size of the land for the churches. I do think that, as Ms. Warner said, it's smaller than in other cities, and so that opens us up to some liability. I also think that Councilmember Krebs' point about it's tough to get people on board without the visual. I think that's part of the reason why the Kensington was successful was that there was something directly to react to. There was something very real and a plan and all of that. Even if we had good diagrams and good renderings of it, it's going to be somewhat theoretical at this point. You know, we won't know what will happen. I also really, it's one of the things that is of keen interest to me is to take a look at the industrial area or the manufacturing area, light manufacturing area. And I think that there's a lot of potential there. There's some large lots there, some real chances to continue to enhance the city. And I'm leaning towards a mixed use in that area. So we don't lose all of our commercial space and ends up being all us being majority residential and very little commercial. I'm also concerned in the area one, the parking lot. It's a head scratcher to me, and I understand why it was selected. I understand a lot of thought had gone into it. But taking out that much parking, even if you do put a parking garage in there, that just seems like a large impact on the downtown. But if I look at areas 3 and 5, I think those are ones that are very attractive for potential future development. So with that, I as I said early on, the idea of having one of the decisions, having both decisions in the EIR so that they can be evaluated and we can look at the overall impacts of them. Hopefully that helps us think through things on the longer term. From my perspective, kind of in the shorter term for this next housing element, I'm really inclined towards option B, that I think that's the way to go now. But really, as Councilmember Garcia said, we've got to be planning for the future on this. We've really got to have the 15, 20-year time horizon on this, because I can't see the housing pressures go away. And so to me, it's a real focus on how do we continue to prepare the city for these eventualities so that when it comes time, we have thought through them. We have educated our public on them. We've got all of the things in place. So with that, I'll hand it back and just my real leaning is towards option B.
Can I ask one clarifying question, Mayor?
Yes.
You had mentioned in your opening comments a concern about the timing with option B in terms of if that was not something that was palatable to the state agency, that you would be concerned that there would have to be a special election. And my understanding was that if they sort of gave us immediate feedback that B was not going to be workable from their perspective, and I'd like to hear from Ms. Warner as to like the reason she think that might be the case, if there is a meaningful risk there. My understanding was that we would then have to sort of pivot now, essentially before the October due date, and either provide A or some variation thereon, so that we could get to a at least conditionally approved plan, and that in either case we would still be well ahead of the general election in 2022. But I just wanted to make sure I was understanding correctly based on your comments.
I'll just clarify my comments, and Ms. Warner, you can answer that as you see fit. But my question or my comment was more towards, I don't think this is the end of our arena, which it's not. There's gonna be more demand for additional affordable housing, and it's gonna come at some point. And maybe it will be in time for an election, but my concern is really of a special election that would have to be on the backs of the city. But Ms. Warner wanted to comment on anything.
Yeah, we will be getting feedback from the state in that 60-day review of the draft. So we will know, long before the city is adopting the element, whether the option that is selected is, acceptable to the state. And there is a good chance that, no matter which way we go, that we'll need to make refinements, because, they're pretty strict on the sites analysis. But we would know that before the adoption of an element in October.
Thank you. And thank you for the clarification, Mayor.
So are there any questions or any other comments? Because I actually would, because we have tabled this so many times, I would like to see if we can take a vote on this today, if we can pass something. But again, I want to make sure that everyone has made comments on this, and I'll probably have a couple more comments before I ask for a vote or a motion. But
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you. Yeah. So, there's so many good points that are being brought up by this council. To Councilmember Krieb's point regarding hearing from the public, I know you guys, Mayor Pro Tem, have been around for a while, and thinking about statistics in my mind and the sample that was part of that community outreach of 25, I could probably name at least 15 of the people that were there without even knowing. So I don't know that that's representative of the community at large, is my fear. So that being said, and believe me, those 15 or 25 are very, very important to the fabric of our community. And I love the engagement, but there's just so many people that tend to be engaged in this town at that level. So that's my fear. And thinking about future arena numbers and thinking about memory, right? Next go around, we're going to be 9 years or 8 years in the future. Measure V will be, 20 years in the books or whatever it might be. I feel as though maybe it has a higher likelihood of reaching those people. And also, I personally, Site 1, I feel like it could change the fabric of our little downtown community village feel. I have a little bit of fear of Site 1. I love Site 3 and Site 5, absolutely. But the one on Mariposa behind our businesses, I feel like it could have a large impact personally on what we have and what we see when we go for our walks on Sierra Madre Boulevard in Baldwin. So yeah, I tend to lean towards keeping residential for now, with the caveat that we know that 8 years or 9 years down the road, we're gonna have to talk about this again, whether or not any of us are still on the council or not. Yeah, I'm leaning towards option B at this point. And going back to Ms. Warner's point is these have to be viable options. They don't necessarily have to be built, right? Whether or not those congregational overlays are built or not, the fact that if they're viable and the state sees them viable, I think that's an important point of distinction.
And I just have one, thank you, Councilmember Garcia. I had one more, just make sure that I am clear on this, whether it's Ms. Lynn or Ms. Warner. For some reason, I remember hearing that even with option B, that we would be below our target, but I thought with the ADUs, we would be on our target.
Correct. With the ADUs, you're on your target without option B.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, I'll just make another push, and we'll see if we can have something passed today. But, again, given with the ADUs, thank you for clarifying that before I made a statement on it, is that, our numbers are projected a lot higher. And so that doesn't mean that each of these sites would have to be maxed out to the total number there. And then also that an affordable housing overlay for the congressional land, if they were to be built out, we're planning as if they are, we have a couple that at least, so Bethany Church is within the downtown area. United Methodist is on Site A is where? Does anyone have that? United Methodist is where?
Mayor, that's on the corner of Michelinda and the Boulevard, diagonal from LaSalle.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yes. Great. Thank you. So, it's not in the downtown area, but it's along the Sierra Madre Boulevard. So, I think that, again, giving the two newer possibilities with the congressional land and the ADUs calculation, not having to go out to the vote for Measure B. And again, it may have to come up at a certain point. I'll go ahead and make the motion to move forward with, give staff direction to move forward on Measure B. Or sorry, not Measure B, Option B. Oh, and it looks, sorry, before we take that vote, it looks like City Attorney Giragosian, you have a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just before you take that vote, I thought if you still wanted the affordability, the household income thresholds for affordable units, is that something that would impact the decision, you think?
Wait, I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, sure. I think earlier you had asked Ms. Warner if she could pull up the
Oh.
income thresholds. I have that in front of me. I'm not sure if you want that.
You know what, let's, just because it was part of the discussion, I just would like you to share that, please.
Okay, so for a family of 4, the household, you qualify as very low income if your household income is 56,000 or less. You qualify as low income if your household income is 90,100 or less. And you qualify as moderate income if your household income is 92,750 or less. And again, this is for a family of 4.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to point that, we're in these different ways of having these meetings. There's one comment directed to me within the chat, and also another question within the chat. And I don't know if we're entertaining those for public comment. And I know public comment has been kind of pseudo closed. So I just want to bring that to your attention.
I appreciate that. And I'm going to ask procedurally from City Attorney if there's some direction you'd like to give as to how that incorporates into virtual meetings or into City Manager.
So I don't think you need to address those comments. The comments need to be raised during public comment, and even during public comment, the individual comments don't need to be addressed directly. Mayor, having said that, if you'd like, you yourself can address it or any council member can address it. It's at your discretion.
Great, thank you. Okay, Mr. City Manager, do you have a comment? No.
No, Mayor, the city attorney said mostly what I was going to say, but much better.
Thank you. Okay, so given that there is a motion on the table.
I'll go ahead and second it.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. Madam City Clerk, can we take a roll call vote, please?
Yes, as I understand it, the motion is for option B.
Yes.
And the Mayor Rachel Arizmendi.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jean Goss.
Nay.
Okay. Nay. Councilmember Edward Garcia.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly Krebs.
Aye.
And Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Aye.
Madam Mayor, the motion passed 4-1 with Mayor Pro Tem Jean Goss voting nay.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thanks. I know we needed that on the record. So, okay, so let's go ahead and thank you very much, Ms. Warner, Ms. Lynn, and Director Gonzalez for that report. And we'll move on to the next item. Which is, I believe it is, moving on to discussion. We have consideration of resolution 21-11, adopting fiscal year 2021 budget adjustments and appropriating the amounts projected. And we have Director Girola Leon, please. Did I say that right, please? Girola Leon.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I have a PowerPoint. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. We'll wait for the PowerPoint to go up. Thank you, Jane. All right, so part of the mid-year budget process is to analyze the year-to-date activity for the first 6 months and then determine if any adjustments are needed. So next slide. Here's a budget summary across all funds. And this year we have seen unexpected increase in expenditures, but yet overall we have a positive net change of expected of 1.08 million across all funds. And we will take a look at the 3 major funds in more detail. Next slide. So let's start off with the general fund. The general fund revenues are expected to increase by 720,000. to end the year at 2.7 million. Next slide. Here are the major drivers for the increase in revenue. The Measure S transaction tax, and also our allocation that we received for COVID relief of 133K. We also expect to receive reimbursement for personnel and equipment assigned to the recent Bobcat fire. Next slide. For general fund expenditures, we're projected to end at 11.1 million, and the proposed adjustment is 45,000. The general fund will absorb any additional expenditures. The next slide. The increase in expenditures is the approved adjustment was for the purchase of the fire engine, and then the general fund increase in payroll costs due to operations, the pandemic, and also the Bobcat fire. There were more costs in payroll. Let me see. We are expecting to pay our share of Unified Command for the Bobcat fire, and we currently have an estimate of about 115,000. Next slide. So overall, the general fund is expected to end the fiscal year with a surplus of 1.4 million. And at a later date, we will bring forward a recommendation to see how we can use some of that surplus to reduce our pension obligations. Next slide. So now the water fund. Overall, the water fund is projected to end with a net change of 1.8 million. And then the budget adjustment recommended is $49,300 and $9,000 for the repair of the generator. Next slide. So as mentioned, these are the budget proposals for budget for water fund, and it's the rental and the repair of the generator. Next slide. And lastly, the sewer fund. Here's the adopted budget for reference. As adopted, there's no recommended adjustments for the sewer fund. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. Do we have any questions for Director Guerrero-Leon?
Madam Mayor,
Councilmember Creeps?
just a quick clarification on the two Bobcat related amounts. It seemed like there was both a expected sort of reimbursement as well as an expected payment by the city or obligation owed by the city. I'm just wondering how those interact and if they offset or are they, or is the reimbursement coming from a different source than the obligation is owed to?
So in the end, it looks like it can offset each other because the reimbursement is coming in as revenue on our side, cost share agreement, and then the other side is the 100K. So it nets out to be $15,000 difference, and when you see the both sides of it. But yes, it looks like they can reimburse, cancel each other out.
So the reimbursement is due from the same, Verdugo, the same as that our payment is, our obligation is due to.
So Councilmember Krebs, the revenue coming in is early on in the Bobcat fire. We're one of the agencies that has a water tender that we were able to staff. We sent that out to provide water to the areas of the fire that were active. And as part of mutual aid, we are allowed to be reimbursed for the cost of our personnel, the backfilling of our overtime, as well as the wear and tear on equipment. So we've estimated that reimbursement to be about $100,000. The $115,000 expenditure is part of joining Unified Command. You have access to all the resources, and you also get access to the bill. So both in the fire, but coming from different areas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And as folks are queuing up for public comment, if you'd like to at this point to comment on the budget, but we'll keep it open for council if you have any other questions.
I just have a clarification on Councilmember Krebs' question.
Please.
So I want to make sure I understand that our net is negative 15,000 approximately. So we're getting revenue on the cost share of 100,000, but the actual outflow on the expense side is 115,000, therefore a net expense of 15,000.
Councilmember Garcia, that's where we've estimated it at this time. The $115,000 is not finalized yet. It could be as low as 25,000, or it could creep up maybe to 150,000. It's our best estimate at this time. The 100,000 is final, though I don't believe we've received reimbursement yet.
Thank you.
That's correct.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Milan, do we have anyone that's called in for public comment on this item?
Madam Mayor, at this time, there is no one wishing to make public comment.
Okay, and do we have anyone that's joined us on video that wants to make a public comment?
Madam Mayor, at this time, no one on video as well.
Okay, great. Thanks. And so then I'll bring it back to City Council. This is an item up for approval, but I want to make sure you have the opportunity to have any discussion or any other comments that you'd like to provide on this item.
Madam Mayor,
Councilmember Parkhurst.
so as I go through this, and Ms. Giro-Leon, correct me if I've got this wrong, we have a net increase in all of our funds balance of 1.1 million. And at the same time, we were able to pay cash for a fire truck, refurbish Kirsten Court, have no staff furloughs, survive a pandemic and one of the worst wildfires in more than a decade. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I know the city has been through, I'm really fortunate. I've come at a time when the budget is in good shape. And I know that it hasn't always been that way. And I continue to be thankful for the council members that came before me, council members Del Mar, council member Harabedian, and council member Capocha, as well as Mayor Arizmendi and Mayor Pro Tem Goss. We are been put in an enviable and very good position thanks to all of the city's hard work. So, just huge kudos. It's making my job as a council member much easier in this. And I think we have a tremendous amount of thanks for that.
And Councilman Parkhurst, thank you for articulating it the way you did and itemizing that all out, because aside from saying this is all great and this is a beautiful budget, I think for folks that are listening in to be able to understand that we were able to do so much at a time when it's been so challenging really helps underscore the fact that our staff is doing an amazing job. And thank you to our city council also for the direction. The staff has just done amazing work over this last year. So thank you for that. Are there any other comments?
I was going to have a comment that was very number oriented, but I think Councilmember Parkhurst actually hit on all those points within his comment, and it was a perfect comment. So I'd rather refrain at this point.
And any other comments before I entertain a motion? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve consideration of resolution 20 or approve resolution 21-11 adopting fiscal year 2021 budget adjustments and appropriating the amounts projected?
So moved.
Councilmember Garcia, thank you.
I'll second.
Member Creeps, thank you for that. And Madam City Clerk, if we could do a roll call vote, please.
Yes. Motion to approve Resolution 21-11, adopting fiscal year 2021 budget adjustments and appropriating the amounts projected. Mayor Rachel Arizmendi.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jean Goss.
Aye.
Councilmember Edward Garcia.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly Creeps.
Aye.
Councilmember Robert Parkhurst. Did we lose Councilmember Robert Parkhurst?
Is on mute. Councilmember
Oh,
Park.
I thought I didn't, I got on and off mute too quickly.
Thank you. Mayor Arizmendi, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our last item for discussion is resolution or consider resolution 21-10, approving the transfer and sale of water from city cyclic water reserves in the main San Gabriel Basin to the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District. And I know Director Prince was here somewhere. Thank you. You've attended the 2 meetings that happened to put you at the tail end, and they're a little bit longer than usual, but thank you for hanging in there. And I think I'm going to be asking Director Reynoso to present this item.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. It's my pleasure to be with you here tonight regarding the consideration of Resolution 21-10, approving the transfer and sale of water from the city cyclic storage account in the main San Gabriel Basin to the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District. The item I bring before you will require council action. At the February 9th meeting, I brought this item before you for information only, and we went into great detail. So today I'll try to give you a slightly condensed version, and I'll be available to answer any questions you may have. So the city of Sierra Madre belongs to the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District, who serves to bring the city and its 3 other member agencies supplemental replenishment water. The district has the right to import up to 28,800 acre-feet from Northern California via the State Water Project or the California Aqueduct. The district's ability to import water is based on a percentage of their contract. Actual delivery varies each year and is contingent on the amount of precipitation that falls in the High Sierra mountain range. The allocation will vary between 5 and 80%, with the average allocation somewhere around 60%. Due to low precipitation this year, the allocation is set and currently remains at 10%. The district currently holds about 11,500 acre-feet in storage and has a replenishment obligation to the main San Gabriel Basin of 14,500 acre-feet. The district has the option to purchase the additional needed water on the open market. However, if the district is going to buy water at a premium, they would prefer the benefit go to one of its member agencies. The city of Sierra Madre is the only member agency that still has water in its cyclic storage account. The district has offered to purchase the city's 2,970 acre-feet for $800 per acre-foot for a total amount of $2,376,592. The city purchased this water at a discounted rate of $100 per acre-foot in fiscal year 2007-2008. The current price for surplus district water is $200 per acre-foot. The city will have the option to repurchase surplus district water when it is available at the then current surplus water rate. The city will have the option to repurchase in increments that will allow for budgeting of the repurchase. So we won't have to buy the whole near 3,000 acre-feet at one time. We consider this to be a win-win opportunity for both the city and the district. The district will receive the water they need to fulfill their obligation and save on conveyance charges. And the city will receive the $2,375,592 for future water treatment and infrastructure needs. Staff is recommending the City Council approve Resolution 21-10 for the sale and transfer of 2,970.74 acre-feet from the City of Sierra Madre's main San Gabriel Basin cyclic storage account to the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District for a sale price of $2,376,592. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Director Reynoso. Director Prince, did you want to share anything? Add anything onto that presentation?
No, as always, Jose hits it out the park. That's exactly where we find ourselves. And I will share the update in terms of we held a special board meeting last week. There was just 1 or 2 members of our board that had a couple concerns with the initial draft of the agreement, particularly on those buyback provisions, with collaboration between our district's general counsel and the city attorney for Sierra Madre, as well as Gabe at the city manager's office. We were able to iron out something that sort of made everybody happy. And the board member who kind of led those concerns was in fact the one who made the motion for us to approve the agreement. I was relegated to making the second. So we were all excited to see, everyone's concerns addressed, and I think we've got the agreement in its perfect form. And again, reiterating my appreciation and admiration for Gabe, Jose, Chris, everyone at the city who's able to get these things done. And there's a lot of reasons, but there's important reasons why we're able to make these kind of things work for Sierra Madre. And we got 4 member cities, but I'm very fortunate to be in the position of representing Sierra Madre, and we're able to have the work power behind the city to meet the district in these opportunities and sort of grab these win-win situations. So thank you to everyone who worked on this. I'm sorry it was a little more work than we initially anticipated a few months ago, but the end result is the end result, and I think it's a good one. And so I'm happy to answer any questions, but as I said, you all have more than capable staff to answer them as well, but I'm here.
Thank you, Director Prince. And before I ask City Council if we have additional questions, I would like to open up the lines for public comment. And so if you would like to make a comment on this item, please call in now or prepare to raise your hand on our video meeting. Do we have any questions from the council for Director Reynoso or to Director Prince? Sorry, I can't see everyone, but any questions? Looks like we have none, given that we asked a lot of questions 2 weeks ago.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Parkhurst.
just a quick one. I don't believe I asked this last time. Director Reynoso, am I right to understand that this was your idea to create this, to put together this plan?
This plan came together in discussions with the general manager from our water district in trying to find really a way to help them solve some of their concerns, and looking at some of the potential concerns that we have in future years with water treatment and infrastructure.
Well, I'd like to applaud everyone whose effort went into this. It's a very, as you characterize it, I agree that it's a win-win situation. And I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, we should just be doing questions, but.
You can give that comment again, or we'll just note it for the following section.
Yeah, we're fortunate at the district to have a very, very long-time general manager who has a kind of encyclopedic knowledge about all 4 member cities and can kind of just file away in his head things that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago and piece those together with current needs. And as Jose said, that was something where he remembered, oh, well, Sierra Madre's got these 3,000 acre feet in cyclic storage from 2004, maybe, there's a play to make here. And Jose rising to the occasion, the 2 of them really were what was able to bring this across the field. Whereas, if we had gone out and hired somebody 2 years ago, new to the district, like a lot of water districts do, probably wouldn't have even known that Sierra Madre had this water in storage. So we're fortunate from both Jose and our general manager, Darren's sort of historical knowledge that we were able to take advantage of that.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Milan, do we have anyone online calling in for public comment on this item?
Madam Mayor, at this time, there isn't anyone wishing to make public comment.
Okay, great. I'll bring it back for discussion for council.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Creeps.
I just want to say that I'm in support of this. I think it's a win-win, as people have said, and I just wanted to also thank City Attorney for indulging me and having a lawyer on council who has comments to agreements. And so thank you for indulging me and my late night reading of contract language. So thank you.
Any other comments? And I'll just reiterate, great work to all that's involved. I mean, this was quite a surprise, I think, when this issue came up and it was brought to our attention. So thank you for all the hard work that's behind this. And I think we're all going to benefit from that. So if there are no other comments, I'll entertain a motion on Resolution 21-10.
I move to approve.
Councilmember Creeps, thanks. Second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. Madam City Clerk, if you can do a roll call vote, please.
Yes, ma'am. The motion to approve Resolution 2110, approving the transfer and sale of water from the City of Sick Lake water reserves in the San Gabriel Valley, in the San Gabriel Valley, and in the San Gabriel Basin to the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District. The vote, Mayor Rachel Arizmendi.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jean Goss.
Aye.
Councilmember Edward Garcia.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly Creeps.
Aye.
Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Aye.
Madam Mayor, the motion carries unanimously.
And thank you. And thank you, Director Prince, for indulging us for 2 meetings, and Director Reynoso for being able to carry this on for 2 meetings also. So thank you. Great work. And we look forward to see what's next with that.
Sure. And I'll note to the city attorney, I am the only lawyer on our board, and I'm the first lawyer in a long time. So our general counsel empathizes with Councilwoman Creeb's consolations for having a lawyer on your board now that reads things as lawyers do. So thank you, everybody, and I hope everyone has a nice night.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any items for future agendas that the council would like to put forward? Okay.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry to belabor the meeting. There was apparently some work with the California Conservation Corps that might be worth bringing up at a future meeting. I think it's from what I've heard, something exciting to discuss.
Great, thank you. And if it's something that I was going to ask city manager to report on in my report, we'll just do that for the next meeting. So thanks. Forgot about that. So if you all can just indulge me just for a moment of silence. And again, I'd like to close in honor of Mayor George Maurer. And again, thank you to the family for sharing him with us all these years. And I will just ask again for the council just to give us 1 moment of silence, and then we will adjourn. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful night, and thank you so much.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember.
do you want to maybe remind folks that our next meeting is actually going to be in person at the band
Yes.
shell?
Thank you for that. March 9 will be at the band shell, and we'll be live, and it starts at 4 o'clock, same time, so we should have daylight out and hopefully good weather. And we will be discussing the monastery, so I know that's an issue that folks are very interested to come out and attend. And I saw other hands. Were there any other, was that the same comment and the same announcement? Yes? No other comments? Okay, with that, we will adjourn. Thank you, everyone.